some noise for
Orange Juice in a Blunt.
Whoreson, the story of a ghetto pimp. "26. Across town, in a small, dingy hotel room, Boots stared at the ceiling too, but her thoughts were not of love and tenderness. She was remembering the harshness of the treatment she had received when she arrived in the big city. It had become like a growing cancer in her mind. No matter how much she drank, her mind came back to that morning. Never in her life had she felt so rejected. No man had ever managed to make her feel so low. Only one thing kept her in this cold city, and that was the thought of revenge. At no time did she ever doubt her ability to revenge the wrong done to her. The only problem was how. She blushed as she remembered how she had broken down and cried inside the car of the man who had stopped to pick her up. He had been an elderly white man with glasses, and he had watched her silently for a few minutes. After she had blurted out like a young schoolgirl how she was stranded in New York without any money, he had offered her train fare home. She had refused the fare, but had accepted $10 so she could get a room. He had refused to come up when he let her out. It was one of the few kind things she had ever had done for her. She would have liked to have been able to return his $10, but he didn't leave an address. He told her to accept it as a gift and not to worry about it. He had blushed when she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. How beautiful life would have been, she thought at that moment, if her father had been any way like that. Kind and gentle and, most of all, understanding. Boots dressed slowly. She tried to remember the good times she had had with Whoreson, but it didn't do any good. Her mind was firmly made up. She stared at the open newspaper again. There he was, big as life, holding Janet. "Well, Mr. Whoreson," she said loudly to the empty room, "you have a few surprises coming to you, my friend. Quite a few surprises." The bar was dimly lit when she entered it. She stared at the few male customers sitting around on the bar stools. Only one of the men had taken any interest in her as she walked across the floor. The rest continued to stare in their drinks. She walked past the bar and joined two women sitting in the rear at a table. They glanced up at her as she approached. She smiled at the two young black prostitutes as she joined their table. One of them was a lesbian, and the other belonged to the lesbian. The lesbian stared at Boots coldly. Ever since Boots had started working out of their bar, she had been trying to figure her out. The first night she had come in, the lesbian had spent $10 with her, hoping to cop another girl. But to her surprise, she quickly found out that Boots was just as experienced in the art of making love to another woman as she was. Boots could take either the top or bottom without the least show of emotion. She could sense something hard about this young hustler out of Detroit, and she didn't want to bring it to the surface. Most of the other women who worked out of the bar gave her plenty room. They didn't care to become involved in any arguments with her, but Boots, on the other hand, would quickly come out and tell her she was full of shit, then laugh at her harshly. Boots sat down without waiting for anyone to invite her. "Hi, Billy, dear," she said, smiling at the lesbian. Billy managed to smile back and glanced out of the corner of her eye at her girl Anne, who was staring at Boots in fascination. She was quick to notice the byplay that always started between Billy and Boots. She remembered the night when Billy was busy. She had approached Boots and let her know that she might be interested in changing pimps. Boots had laughed at her and told her she wasn't a lesbian. Anne stared openly at the tall, dark-skinned woman who aroused her so much. Her avid interest was not missed by Billy. "Anne," she said sharply, "you run down to Lee's bar and see if any tricks are there." Anne started to object, but Billy reached across the table and slapped her. The sound was like a shot going off in a small place. People turned and stared as Anne jumped up and ran out of the bar. Billy stared coldly at Boots. There was a look in her eyes that said, "If you have any objection, spit it out." "She's young yet," Billy said quietly. "She has a lot to learn." "Don't blow your whore over me, Billy," Boots said coldly. "I wouldn't have if you gave her to me, so don't push it." "I just don't understand you," Billy said, laughing to cover up her confusion. "Boots, I ain't never seen no bitch in my life that acted like you do. What do you want?" "I want a yellow nigger's ass locked up so long he'll have cobwebs on his dick when he gets out," Boots answered. Her voice trembled. Billy glanced at her nervously, then said jokingly, "If that's all you want, you ain't got too much of a problem. There's a detective sitting at the end of the bar now, trying to catch some poor whore for soliciting." Boots glanced up at the young detective at the end of the bar. Something clicked in her mind. She smiled coldly and got up. The chilling look in her eye made Billy even more nervous. She watched Boots make her way across the bar floor towards the policeman. "Hi there," Boots said, and stopped beside the officer. He glanced up at her and smiled. His eyes were a mild brown, and he wore his short brown hair in a crew cut. "What can I do for you, young lady?" he asked easily. "How much money you want to spend?" He stared at her curiously. There was a brightness in her eyes that made him wonder whether she was on dope or something. "What about $10?" he asked slowly, watching her face. She glanced over his shoulder and saw the bartender shaking his head at her. "That will be just fine," she answered, and started walking towards the door. The policeman caught up with her, and when they reached the street, he flashed his badge. "You're under arrest for accosting and soliciting," he informed her. She smiled over her shoulder at him and never broke step. "That's just fine with me," she replied, then asked, "Do you think I might be able to get the charges dropped if I give up my pimp?" The officer's heart skipped a beat. He wondered if he had heard correctly. It was rare for a prostitute to even admit she had a pimp, let alone propose dropping her charges if she busted her man. "If we can get a case on him, I'm quite sure we can work out something in your favor," he answered. Boots smiled coldly. It didn't really make any difference whether they dropped the charges on her or not. The main thing was racking up Whoreson's goddamn ass.